I was raised in a house people respected. From the outside, it looked strong and steady, like it would last forever. Inside, everything had rules. The rules were not written down, but everyone knew them. Speak when spoken to. Agree before questioning. Obey before understanding. The elders often pointed to me during gatherings. They said I carried promise. They said I would bring honor if I stayed true to the ways of the house. I believed them. I learned early that praise was warm and silence was cold. I stayed where it was warm. One evening, after the lamps were dimmed, an elder pulled me aside. His voice was low and careful. He told me belonging was not something you owned. It was something you kept earning. Do not wander too far in your thoughts, he said. Curiosity breaks more than it builds. I nodded, even though I did not fully understand. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I wondered why something that felt like love needed so many warnings. I told myself I was lucky. Still, a quiet fear settled in my chest. If love could be taken away, what happened when I changed? The question came to me during a ritual I had seen many times. We stood in a circle, repeating words we barely thought about anymore. This time the words felt heavy. I felt something pull at me like a thread unraveling. I raised my hand. My voice shook, but I spoke anyway. I asked why we followed this rule if it hurt so many people. The room went still. Even the fire seemed to pause. No one shouted. No one scolded me. The elders exchanged looks, then smiled in a way that did not reach their eyes. One thanked me for my thoughtfulness. Another said questions were signs of growth. I felt relief wash over me. That relief did not last long. That night, as I passed a doorway, I heard my name spoken softly. The elders were worried, not angry. They said I was watching the wrong paths. They wondered who had planted ideas in my head. I stepped away before they saw me. My hands were shaking. I had not broken a rule, yet something had shifted. I realized then that questions were more dangerous than mistakes. I went to sleep knowing I was being watched. The next change was small, almost kind. I was told I would rest from one of my duties. It was a role I had held since childhood. I was proud of it. The elder said it was only temporary. I nodded and thanked him, even though my stomach felt tight. I watched as someone else took my place the very next day. That person followed every rule without pause. The elders praised their steadiness. When I asked when I might return to my role, I was told to be patient. Patience shows trust, they said. Trust, I was learning, meant silence. People spoke to me differently now. Their words were careful and measured. Smiles faded faster. I began to notice how quickly warmth could turn distant. That night, I sat alone and replayed my question again and again. I wondered if I should have kept it inside. I wondered if truth was only welcome when it matched the rules. As I drifted off to sleep, I sensed an additional sensation, one I couldn't yet identify. It was not a duty or a title. It was the feeling that I was safe being fully myself. Love in the house changed shape. It became instruction. Every conversation felt like a lesson I was failing. An elder told me I was becoming different. He said difference was dangerous because it spread. He warned me not to confuse thought with wisdom. Wisdom listens, he said. Thought questions. I tried to explain that I only wanted to understand. He nodded, but his eyes stayed hard. Understanding comes later, he replied. Obedience comes first. Meals grew quiet when I entered the room. Advice came often, but kindness did not. I felt like a problem everyone hoped would solve itself. I found myself at a pivotal point within my heart. I could stay quiet and be safe, or I could speak and risk everything. Each day I chose silence, and each day it cost me more. One evening, I caught my reflection in a dark window. I looked smaller somehow. I realized I was shrinking to fit a place that no longer held me. That night, I made a choice I knew I could not undo. If I were going to lose belongings, I would not lose myself first. The truth came out in a room full of elders. I did not shout. I did not accuse. I simply said what everyone avoided. I said the rules were hurting people. I said fear was being called tradition. No one argued. That was the worst part. The elders listened, faces calm and unreadable. When I finished, the room felt hollow. One elder thanked me for my honesty. Another said I had spoken from confusion, not wisdom. They asked me to leave while they made their decision. I waited outside, heart pounding. I told myself this was a conversation, not a sentence. I told myself they would guide me back. When they summoned me back, they had already made their choice. They said I was no longer aligned with the house. They said keeping me would cause harm. They said this was not punishment but protection. I was told to leave before dawn. I was told to take nothing that tied me to the house. My name, they said gently, would stay behind. As I stepped into the night, I realized I had been judged without ever being accused of a crime. I stood at the door longer than I should have. I waited for footsteps. I waited for a voice to call my name. None came. The door closed without force. No anger, just finality. The night air was sharp and empty. I took one step, then another, until the house was only a shadow behind me. My chest ached with questions I would never ask again. I walked until the ground grew uneven and the lights disappeared. Fear followed me, but so did something else. Silence. The familiar sensation of breathing returned. When morning came, hunger joined the fear. I had no plan, no map, and no title to carry forward. I had been told I would fail. I believed it. As the sun climbed higher, I stopped and looked back. The house was gone from sight. For the first time, returning was no longer an option. I did not know it yet, but that door had freed me. It had freed me from a place that could never let me grow. The days that followed were hard. I slept in places not meant for rest. I learned how loud silence could be. Hunger pushed me close to turning back. I told myself I could apologize. I could promise obedience. I could become smaller again. One night, I stood at the edge of the path that led home. My legs shook. My pride felt foolish. Then I saw smoke in the distance. Fires that did not originate from the house were visible in the distance. The voices I heard lacked any hint of fear. I turned away from the path I knew and walked toward the unknown instead. The people I met were not polished or powerful. They were worn out, scarred, honest. Each had been cast aside for being too slow, too loud, or too curious. They shared food without asking for loyalty. They listened without correcting. For the first time, my questions were not treated like threats. That night, sitting by their fire, I felt something loosen inside me. I realized I was not broken. I had been placed where breaking was required. I stayed with them longer than I planned. Days turned into weeks. I learned how to help, how to listen, and how to build instead of obey. No one named me leader. No one needed to. I spoke when it mattered and stayed quiet when it didn't. Trust grew without command. Together we built something small. Shelter. Shared meal. Place where no one was erased. More people came. Some had been rejected gently, others harshly. The stories were different, but the pattern was the same. Fear wore many masks. As the settlement grew, so did whispers. Travelers spoke of a place that should not exist. It was a place where individuals flourished in the absence of strict regulations. I never told them my past. I did not need to. The work mattered more than the story. One evening, a traveler described our valley back to us as if it were a legend. I laughed softly. I did not know then that those stories were already traveling back to the house that had cast me out. The first echo reached the house long before I knew. Travelers praised a leader without a name. They spoke of listening and sharing strength. The elders were curious. They admired the wisdom, unaware of its source. When the truth reached them, it came quietly. Habit. A way of speaking. A scar they remembered. I was told later that silence filled the room again. They realized then what they had lost. They had lost not a child, but a future. A message was sent, carried carefully across distance. Spoke of regret. Of misunderstanding. Of an open door. I read it once and folded it away. I did not feel anger. Felt clarity. The house had not failed me. It had revealed itself. I stayed where I was. The valley did not need permission to exist. Neither did I. I understood then what the exile had been. It was not rejection. It was released. The house could only hold who I used to be. My departure created space for the new self I was transforming into. I stood at the edge of the valley as the sun set, watching people move freely, speak openly, and live fully. No one here had to earn their place by shrinking. I thought of the door that closed behind me. Smiled. Some doors close because they fear what you might become. Others close because you have already outgrown them. As the valley grew, so did its needs. More people arrived each season, drawn by stories they barely believed. We built carefully, never faster than trust could keep up. I made mistakes. I learned from them. No one punished me for learning. Some nights, I wondered what the house looked like now. I imagined the elders sitting where they always had, guarding rules that no longer protected them. The thought no longer hurt. It felt distant, like remembering a place from a dream. One afternoon, a traveler arrived carrying more than supplies. He carried questions. He asked who had taught me to lead this way. I told him no one had. I told him I learned by losing everything first. He nodded like he understood. Before leaving, he said the house was changing. Fewer voices, more fear. The elders were arguing about the future, unsure how to guide a world that no longer waited for their approval. That night, I walked alone through the valley. I realized then that success had never been the goal. Freedom had been. And freedom had grown quietly, without permission, right where they said I would fail. Another message came weeks later. This one was different. It was not an invitation. It was a confession. The elders admitted they had been wrong to believe control was care. They said the house was weaker now, not stronger. They asked if I would return to guide them. I held the message for a long time. I felt the weight of what they were asking. Not forgiveness. Responsibility. I gathered the people of the valley and told them the truth of where I came from. I expected disappointment. I found understanding instead. They told me I could go if I needed to. They said the valley would stand either way. That was when I understood the final difference. The house needed me to survive. The valley wanted me to choose. I sent a reply, short and honest. I said I wished them peace. I said I hoped they would learn to listen. I said I would not return. When the messenger left, the wind felt lighter. For the first time, I knew I owed my past nothing more. The truth slowly swept through the house. Without me, without control, the elders struggled. Their authority no longer held the same weight. People questioned. Left. The elders finally spoke aloud what they had buried for years. They had feared what I represented. Change without permission. Growth without hierarchy. They realized they had not protected tradition. They had trapped it. Travelers returned with one final report. The valley was no longer small. It was thriving. Children were growing without fear. Elders there listened instead of ruled. My name was spoken again in the house, not as a warning, but as regret. I learned later that one elder wept openly. Another said nothing at all. They had disowned me to preserve power. They had lost everything in their attempt to maintain power. Standing in the valley, watching new homes rise, I felt no pride. Only understanding. Some lessons arrived too late to save the past. But it's not too late to shape the truth. Years passed. The valley became a place people spoke of with hope. I never called myself a leader. I simply stayed. One evening, a young person asked me why I never went back. I told them the truth. I said some places only love who you were. Others love who you are becoming. The house had loved my obedience. The valley loved my honesty. I imparted to them the lessons I had acquired through hardships. That being chosen is not the same as being free. That silence can be louder than exile. Losing a place can lead to discovering yourself. As the fire burned low, I felt the final weight lift from my chest. I no longer needed the house to understand me. The story had completed itself. I sometimes dream of the door. Not as it was, but as it was truly meant. It was never a wall. It was a gate. I was not pushed out because I failed. I was let go because I could not stay small anymore. The house needed sameness. I needed truth. Some people are not rejected because they are broken. They are released because they are becoming something the old world cannot contain. I stand now where I belong. Not because I was allowed to stay, but because I was brave enough to leave. I was never disowned. I was released.